Everyone, and today we are going to cover the theory of Rollo May, the existential psychoanalysis, the personality theory presented by Rollo May. In this theory, we are going to cover a few important points and the ideas which were given by Rollo May. First of all, let's see what existential psychoanalysis will propose and what we are going to cover. Existentialism actually believe that, it actually believe that we need to understand the anxiety, despair, and alienation that people feel from themselves and the society. And existentialism just does not lie in isolation, but it is taking its roots from psychoanalysis, and it grew out from that same cultural values which have affected and which have developed, which have discovered and helped in discovery and the development of psychoanalysis. So, Rollo May is also not alienating on from the Freud's idea, and he is not diverting from those ideas, but he is making his own stance, his own original stance, and his own theory based on those ideas of the psychoanalytic tradition, and also inculcating the existentialist movement which was prevailing over there in those times when this theory was proposed. He also highlighted the importance of philosophy and the values for the psychologist in the theory of personality. And we can say that he is also considered as the father of American existential psychology. Talking about the background of Rollo May and how he came to this point that he proposed this new theory of existential psychoanalysis. Existential psychoanalysis was that he was born on 21st April 1909 in Ohio, and at that time the anti-intellectual attitude was prevailing over there, and his parents were very conservative for that time. He was not having very good bonding and the good relationship with his parents, and they also got separated eventually, and he also got divorced twice, and he blamed that to his parents and especially to his mother as well, that she had psychotic breakdown as well. Whereas having all these disturbances, he himself was suffering from some physical illnesses, and which ended up that he went on for a few years with those sufferings, and after that he started studying clinical psychology, and he earned his PhD in clinical psychology. There he started to understand and figuring out the purpose of life under those unpredictable moments of his life which he went through, which he gone through them. Then when we are talking about his family structure, then his father was also against the education, and he used to target the elder sister, his elder Rollo May's elder sister, that she got too much of the education. That's why she is experiencing those psychotic breakdowns. May also felt and comment that inhuman and destructive comments were and those hate speeches. He was also against those things. So he moved on and he started his focus, and he started and he shifted his focus in professional career towards psychology. And now let's talk about the existential attitude, what he has proposed. There are few 5 points which I would like to highlight over here, that these are the five main concepts and these five main ideas on which this existentialism is going to take its roots. The first is that existence, according to Rollo May, existence is what is precedence to our essence, and he takes essence as just the product, and it is not the whole real concept about a human. And the second thing about which existentialism talks about is that it opposes the split between subject and object. We are going to go into the detail of all these 5 points in this theory, but this is an overview what we are going to cover. So secondly, that existentialism is talking about that human is more of the subject and not an object on which we can do some measurements, and we can give a generalized statement or objective viewpoint about a human, but it is more of an emerging and becoming sort of a thing, and not that much objective. Third thing of existentialism is that people search for some meaning in their life. They want to know what their purpose is and what they are going behind and what is the goal and what is the destination. So they used to find some purpose and they ask the important question concerning their being. The fourth point, existentialists believe in that they hold the ultimate that ultimately each of us is responsible for who we are and what we are going to become. And lastly, the fifth point which we need to highlight, and this is going to be the part of this theory, is that existentialists are basically anti-theoretical. They just do not dehumanize a person and just does not make the person to lock into one theory. So moving on with that mindset, we are going to talk about Rollo's theory. This is the first existential attitude, that what type of attitude they hold in this theory. Existentialist movement is came in those times when there was the resistance movement going on in the World War II, and there are few philosophers who played their own part and who played a very significant role in the theory in the in that movement, existential movement as well. Kierkegaard, Heidegger, and Sartre are the most prominent names of that existentialism movement. The word existentialism comes from the Latin word existere, which means to stand out and to emerge. And this is what existential theory used to talk about. The existentialist approach focuses that how a person is becoming and emerging as one complete whole. Moving on with this idea that this was a time when Western philosophies used to understand psychology and the human as an essence, and they were looking for just the essence of that human, and they were not focused on the process of that becoming. So that essence of being was unchangeable principles and the laws which were followed at that time. And the one best example for that is mathematics, which was a pure science of in the form of that approach. In psychology, whereas existentialist attitude express itself in the efforts to understand human in terms of force, drives, and conditioned reflexes. But existentialists take another way around that, and they talk about that existence and the reality exists more and it costs more, rather than only focusing on essence. They are not totally negating essence, but they are focusing on essence. They are focusing on existence and the reality more than focusing on the laws and the rules. We can say that we can say and we can understand the difference between essence and existence in a way that essence is just that existence, we can say, is going to emerge or become one person, and essence is a static immutable substance, whereas existence, we can say, is the process and the essence is the product of that thing. As we are giving the example, we are using the example of mathematics as well. So this is one of the examples that it is just the product of that process. So it is not, maths is not talking about that process. Math is just talking about the product of, and the answer of that thing, and not about the process of that thing. So this is about the rules and the laws, and this is about that how existentialist wants to understand a person as the is in the process, in the form of process, not just the product or the objective thing. So existentialist points out that law can be true, yet it just does not need to be real. For example, if we talk about two unicorns plus two unicorns makes four unicorns, which is logically true, but we are not talking about if it is real or not. Either there are actually two unicorns and unicorns do exist or not. We are not talking about that because we are not focused on the existence. We are just focused on the product or the answer of that thing. So this is the main thing existentialism is talking about. Existentialism bridges the gap between the abstractly what is abstractly true and existentially real. Moving forward with this example is going to make it more clear for you. In existentialism, there are two attitudes and there are two postures which are being taken here for to make it more clear. The two possible postures in any person's life, and we can narrate with the example of a football game that there are two possible postures. One is that of the spectator who is just observing from the stand, cheering the players, and the other possible posture is that of a player. The spectator is just observing, and the player on the field is doing all the actions, and all his behaviors are going to influence the outcome of the game. So he is the active member of this game, and who is going to change the outcome of that game. Existentialists take this idea, and and we are going to talk about that how a person is going to take the charge of a spectator or a player. So existentialists believe that a person or a human takes the role of a player, and he is not just a detached or uninvolved spectator only, but he is taking charge of his actions and behaviors, and his actions and behaviors are going to have a clear outcome on his life, and the game he is playing is the game of his life, and that is what is going to change the outcome. He simply may also pointed out that we cannot adequately explain a person on that basis of essence, because we end up talking about abstractions rather than a whole complete person. Moving forward with this, May also pointed out that the person's behavior are quite unpredictable, and but he is not talking all about unpredictability, but he is talking more about the flexibility in the person, because psychologists used to talk about just the laws, and they used to test, and they used to identify a person's behavior in the laboratory or through the experiments as well. But existentialists believe that the psychologist's preoccupation with lawfulness and predictability stands in the way of their understanding a person. So, what May pointed out that behavior of a neurotic is quite predictable because he is compulsive, and the healthy person's behavior is predictable because that behavior is dependable and consistent. But at the same time, he also says that healthy person can be flexible and spontaneous as well. This theory has always been criticized, that he narrated that a person is always unlawful and unpredictable, but May is also talking about not only about the unpredictability but also about the flexibility in a person. And existentialists do not see human in terms of the traditional contemporary personality theories as well, and they just do not want to understand a person in a fixed laws or rules, but they want to understand a person in their own particular existence and in their own lawfulness, not without laws, but every person governs his own laws, governs his own individuality and his own existence. So they are trying to make that stance over here. An existentialist approach is not anti-scientific, but it also talks about that how you can broaden the methodology, the scientific methodology we use to understand the human in more broader horizon. Continuing with that, the existentialist view takes the inquiry to a deeper level to look at the structure in which the concepts are rooted. They are going to talk about the whole of the person and not to split him into two different dimensions, as we have used that in different theories earlier as well, that nature versus nurture debate, body versus mind debate. So existentialist talks about that on priority we first understand the person in a unity, and then we are going to then you have to make different compartments or making different dimensions to understand the person, like body versus mind, nature versus nurture, subjective versus objective. Existentialist approach also encourage that we do not need to look at the person in the form of an object. We used to train, even psychologists, we used to train our students in the way that they need to be objective. The emotions cannot be objective, the emotions and the feelings cannot be objective. So when the person is looking for the objective things, they are trying to measure things as they have been done before. So they want to get the answers in objectively, and human is not an object, they are subjective. So we need to minimize our focus on objectivity, and we need to have more depth in our understanding of a human, because objectivity is resisting and preventing us to understand a person fully, and this is strongly resisting the tendency. Existentialism is talking about the subjectivity of the person and how we need to focus on more of the subjectivity to understand the person fully and avoid objectivity, which is going to resist our complete understanding of the person. Moving forward with the main problems and the challenges and the weaknesses of what existentialism understand is that the central problem that we face is a feeling of powerlessness, a pervasive feeling of powerlessness, which is casting on a human which is casting on human beings from their culture, from their pressurizing, competitive, cultural, social, economic problems which are causing, they are making a person more powerless, and those powerlessness are compounded in the form of anxiety and the loss of the traditional values, the number of wars in the past, and the number of threats the person used to anticipate in their situations and in their environment. This is also increasing their level of powerlessness, and that level of powerlessness can also be targeted towards the increased technology, because as much there is the technology, the more things are getting out of the control of that human, because if there is a computer failure, there is a slight failure, computer malfunction, then that malfunction could lead towards number of consequences to the person, the threat to the nuclear wall, to unsettling social conditions, whatever that could be. And this condition is going to cause more of the powerlessness, more of the impotence, and these unpredictable situations are causing a person more more towards the anxiety and anxiousness and the stress. The potentiality of such disasters cause a person to be more impotent, making them feel more helpless, making them feel more insignificant, and this impotence leads to anxiety and repression, which further leads towards apathy, which is, we can say in the simple terms, the insensitivity towards things, and that insensitivity is working as a defense or a protection for that person, because when person will be insensitive, they will not be feeling that pain, that hurt from the situation, and that impotence and that apathy is going to breed, that insensitivity is going to breed more hostility and the violence in the future, which further is going to alienate a person, and the person eventually will become isolated and alone. So this all scenario is leading towards the anxiety, and when some psychologists used to prefer the term the stress in place of anxiety, then May was dissatisfied with this use of term of stress, because stress again made things more measurable, more defined, whereas May believe that stress is not going to adequately narrate the whole picture of apprehension which a person experiences in the form of anxiety. It puts the emphasis on what happens to a person, where anxiety is distinctly bounded up and consciousness and subjectivity. When we are talking about anxiety, is the apprehension, which is the threat to someone's value, which is a threat towards something which a person values and which has some value or incentive towards in a person's life. So this is what anxiety is. The potential for anxiety is innate, although the particular events that may become threatening are learned, whereas anxiety is innate. Fear is just one expression of anxiety which can be objectified as well, whereas May suggested that anxiety is intensified in our competitive culture, and one person is going to feel much more pressured because he wants, the anxiety is about what? About the validation from his environment. So when one person views themselves as an object, so they want validation for themselves, and when they want validation, that is going to inculcating the anxiety in that person. Let's talk about the rediscovering selfhood. This is the last topic of this theory. When we are talking about this, that May said that to rediscover oneself, we need to know and we need to own our own feelings and desires, and we need to fight against those things that prevent us from having our own feelings and desires and wants, rather than absorbing other environmental feelings or desires. There are four stages of consciousness of self. The first is innocence, second is rebellion, third is ordinary consciousness of self, and the fourth one is creative consciousness of self. These four stages, and the first one is innocence. In innocence, before consciousness of the self is born, this stage is narrated. It is the characteristic of an infant when the person has just about the first stage, innocence, in which the infant has acquired is going to acquire his consciousness about his own self or about his physical existence. This is the stage of innocence. The second is rebellion, in which the individual is going to understand and establish his own inner strength, what are his desires, wants, ways of doing things, and now he is having his own say and his own wishes and wants, and now he has the strength to say no to certain opinions, and he wants to test his boundaries and he wants to test his own ideas in his environment as well. So this is the rebelliousness, which may involve defiance and hostility as individual seeks the freedom but does not comprehends that this responsibility comes with certain consequences as well. The third stage is ordinary consciousness of self, which is the most healthy personality. It involves being able to learn from one's mistakes and improving them and live responsibility. The last stage is creative consciousness of self, and this is rarely experienced by people. And this is more closely related with the Maslow's peak experiences and the self-actualization stage. And the creative consciousness of self, it is the ability of the person to see something outside one's usual limited viewpoint. They are going to take a broader horizon and they are going to see things in a broader way, not as a narrowed lawful way which has been governed to them by their environment. So they are going to be more open to the box experiences they are going to experience in this stage, and they are going to ultimately understand the reality and understand the purpose of their existence. So this was all about Rollo May theory of existential psychoanalysis. Good luck.